All right, we're back with another great Felix and Friends episode. This time with good friend and past colleague Kimberly Mora. She has a wealth of insight as far as like cannabis sales, as far as being an author, as far as being a woman's perspective in the industry. There's a lot of cool things in this show that we're going to be chatting about. I'm looking forward to dive into it. Kimberly, do you want to give a little introduction to who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Felix, for letting me come on your podcast. I'm super excited. Nice to meet each and every one of you. And, I want to refer to all of your viewers as friends because we're all in the same community here. So, hello, friends. My name is Kimberly Mora. I live in the city of Azusa. That's currently where I reside, but I'm originally from North Hollywood. I am Hispanic, Salvadorian, and Mexican, third generation here in America. So, I'm a proud Latina representing entrepreneur women and just authors, upcoming authors and poets that are trying to be in the space. But yeah, I'm just really happy to be here.
That's awesome. I've known you in a cannabis sales capacity, and right from the get go, I could tell that you weren't a new salesperson. You kind of had an agenda. You kind of knew how to work with clients and customers, and also had like a very good perspective as a salesperson in the industry. Where did you kind of get your teeth cut in the industry, and like where did you kind of start off?
For sure. Well, let's start off like, how did I get into the industry, right?
Yes.
So originally, I was actually a nurse assistant for a cancer facility. And, being in the industry, I was originally meant to be an RN, then, maybe one day a pediatric nurse or something, right? But after a while, during COVID, I really hit a peak in my nursing field where I felt there was so much more to me than just to be a nurse. And this is not like diminishing nurses, like, shout out to all my nurses. Like, I love all of you guys for what you do. But I felt like in my journey, I just hit a stop. So I kind of needed to make another road for myself that gave me more of a purpose. And to me, I've always felt like sales always pushed me to that drive, that happiness. It really got me going as a person and really fueled my spirit. So when I was working in the cancer facility, I really saw like the benefits of, what flower did for my patients. So something just clicked in me that day. I was like, like, let me see if I could find some sort of industry where I could do sales and maybe I could get in the industry in cannabis, right? So that's kind of like how I found myself, into a new industry. And that's how I got myself in here. And that gave me a new road, a new purpose, and, finding a new community. And now here I am 4 years in the cannabis space, definitely working my way up in sales in different industries. But yeah, that's kind of like how I went through it. And then, yeah, that's basically what went down.
Having like the nursing perspective, like coming into cannabis, is very interesting,
Hmm.
and it kind of helps dictate how you treat cannabis. I've seen the people with a healthcare background and like especially nursing, it comes from very much of like a caregiver and kind of like like how can I help you, right? It's not necessarily like a cool factor or just getting high, which people do, but
Yeah.
it is very much like a caring perspective that it comes from, and it really carries through into your sales, also into like different leadership and management perspectives, which is great to bring into the industry.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's like how you said, just to like go off of what you said, it does bring in the nurturing and caring side. Of course, for the flower, but also for the clients that you're dealing with, or also like your colleagues that you're like working on a 24/7 level. It's very important, right? So yeah, those are really good characteristics that you pointed out, and it is true. Yeah, we definitely
Yeah.
carry that over to the industry.
Yeah, I've seen back when I started in cannabis, it was like 2016 or so, some of the early dispensaries, medical ones that were starting up here in Illinois, and seeing those patients that came in that like actually got through to the system, when there's only like, 16,000 residents,
Yeah,
16,000 like patients in all of Illinois. It's like these people like need cannabis, right? And I
right.
was very much like on the perspective of like medical cannabis is like kind of, it's kind of a get out of jail free card or stay out of jail free card before I got my cannabis card.
Yeah,
And
totally.
then it was just kind of once I started only consuming cannabis products that were clean and like from the dispensary, I started noticing the medical benefits from it and became, an evangelical cannabis consumer immediately. And
Right.
working in the dispensary, you see those people that are just like, they need help, and then it's even more convincing, as I'm sure you saw it too, where it's like, people that are doing very terrible on traditional medicine for long
Right.
times, and then they smoke a joint or they hit a vape pen or they use some cream on their elbows. All of a sudden, like
Hmm.
that, and people that are in pain, they know when something's working right away.
A hundred
And
percent.
yeah, it's very interesting.
For sure, for sure. And that's one thing I want to like let you know. Like, I feel like everyone in this industry does have like a certain family member that's dealing with certain pains. Like, for example, like my grandma, she deals with heavy arthritis, right? And of course, like pharmaceuticals, they're going to definitely prescribe you with all these pills, which is fine up to a point where it's like not letting you eat, up to a point where it's not letting you sleep, up to the point where it's like destroying your mental wellness, right? And then just like how you said, yeah, the creams do help. Like she felt it automatically as soon as she started putting it on her knees, where she suffers a lot of arthritis. Anxiety. A lot of people deal with anxiety and stuff like that. So that's where like a lot of benefits from the flower does come from that, right? And it really calms a lot of people down because we all go through stuff day to day in our lives. We all have our own traumas, but like I feel like the best route is to go through the route of the flower, which comes from the earth, right? So we're
Yep.
just recycling what we're given in this life.
The Western medication and stuff, like it, I'm pretty much okay with it when it works, but when you start having to take other medications for the side effects of the first medications, and it's like, okay, now we're like, let's take a step back here and like, what are we actually solving for, right? And so like, if we can kind of
Hmm.
like simplify things, and it's like, yeah, let's see if there's something that we can use for anxiety, for pains and aches, and stomach pains and all that kind of stuff. Let's do something a little bit more natural, and I'm definitely more for that.
100%, 100% agree.
So how have you seen those, like your nursing skills, kind of translate into sales? Because I've seen like how that can be done.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you saw firsthand how it worked. But, carrying like the attributes of a nurse, right? When I'm taking care of a patient, I have to be the most caring, most positive, because I'm with people at their worst, right? So, how I translated to the cannabis industry and to hone in more on sales is that I care about my clients, right? I care about my colleagues. But let's split it down into two because when it comes down to the clients, it's definitely a lot of stress. It's definitely a lot of, conversation, negotiations, etc. Everything that you want to check off in sales, you do it, right? But at the end of the day, you got to understand that these clients, they're humans, right? They all started at a certain pace. A lot of people started in their garages. A lot of people even went to jail in this industry, right? And they
Yep.
got out and they still decided to continue their business and be successful in the space, right? So there is a lot of grace that I do take upon my clients and a lot of understanding, a lot of caring, a lot of listening for sure. Because I feel like sometimes, I've been, guilty of it sometimes too, that we tend not to listen, right? Because as salespeople, we get too caught up on the other side where your colleagues or your VPs or your managers are telling you, you need to hit quotas, you need to hit sales, that you tend to fall short on your clients and you don't listen to them anymore after a while. And
Yep.
that in nursing, it's called neglect, right? And same thing in sales, you're neglecting your client because you're not listening to what they are trying to tell you, right? And then also when it comes to, attributes, I definitely care a lot, about my clients. I feel like when they're winning, when I go to a dispensary and I see, like, for example, a vaporizer, right? Because my background is in vapes, when I see their devices in the dispensaries and I see like the awesome colors and the silk prints we put together and just like the packaging and just like even sometimes the name, I was even sometimes involved in some names that these people were kind of trying to see what will pop in the market, just to see how amazing it is that I could go to any dispensary and see their brand in the dispensary and know that I had a part of it. That was like probably the most biggest achievement ever. It wasn't about the sales. It wasn't about how much they ordered from me. It was more about, man, I want to walk into any dispensary, whether it's in California or even in the East Coast to New York. If I could go to any dispensary and I see their vapes there, I know I did my job as a person because I know that what they had in mind is already there. It's like a goal accomplished. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like one thing that gets me like all jittery and excited, because it's like, man, like we all did it together, you know, we all won together. So that's one thing. And then when it comes to like colleagues and stuff, the attributes I bring from like nursing, you know, we all have bad days, right? We all have our outside lives that we bring in, especially to work. And it's really hard to really zone out from that, because a lot of people do bring it on the inside of the door once you walk into your company, or once you log in, you know, if you're working remote through the computer, like a lot of things happen, right? And it doesn't help either, like when you're dealing with a lot of internal things in the company, that it's really hard to speak to people, right? So I try to be my best, once again, to be a good listener. And that's something that I did bring from the nursing field as well, is being a good listener and hearing you out. And yeah, maybe sometimes you say isn't right, but sometimes it's meant to be heard, you know, because it's really difficult when you're in a corporation and you're not being heard by your managers or your CEOs or your VPs. Like, who do you rely on? Especially in sales, you need to rely on your colleagues. Yes, in the end of the day, we're all trying to hit different quotas. You know, hopefully you're not in an industry where you guys compete with each other, but most of us are, you know. And I feel like it's like people like me and other people that are going to get inspired by this podcast, is that you should be responsible to also be the ear for your colleagues, right? Be the positivity for your colleagues. And then that would just be a domino effect as well. Like they would be the positivity to you when you need it. Because we're all human. I'm not saying we're all going to be perfect. We're all going to be like, hey, it's a great day, even though like the walls are burning, right? Because we
Yeah.
all deal with that in sales. But I think it's very important for us to understand that one person's attitude could definitely change somebody else's attitude, right? And I
Oh
feel like
yeah.
the only thing we can control as people, as individuals, and we're really responsible for ourselves, is our mindset, right? Our mindset, the way we go about it, the things that we really control, right? Because it's not, in the end of the day, it's not our company, it's more of theirs. And what we could control is like, hey, hands up, like I let you know, I let my colleagues know, like I'm feeling the same thing. But, you know, we're all here together and we're going to walk through the fire together, but let's make it happen, you know? So,
Exactly.
yeah.
I think that makes it, it's, I mean, you touched on a lot of great points there. And I think that, you know, keeping your clients like KPIs in mind is always like a successful thing for a salesperson. That was a great tie-in that you had with like neglect and like being like a caregiver for like, you know, a nurse versus like, you know, a client. Cause you're both looking for, you know, an optimal outcome for your, you know, partner or success or your patient, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if you're not hearing what goals they're looking for, you're not going to have a successful outcome in like your client or your patient's eyes. You know, there's always, you know, people, you know, budget's always a very considerate, right? So like if your client's on like an extreme budget, finding the best of the best and, you know, the most luxurious thing is not going to be the right thing for them, right? So if you try to push that on them, they don't want that. So yeah, and I think then communicating that within your organization is also really important. Like you were saying, like making sure that we're all working together, and having like I've seen salespeople, you know, their egos they boost up, right? They're like, if I wasn't here, like this company wouldn't do anything, right? It's like, well, if the company wasn't producing anything, you wouldn't be here, you know, kind of thing. So I think that
Exactly.
like knowing your part in the organization and like seeing it all work together, like is like the successful model, right?
For sure.
In
And
cannabis, like
culture,
yes,
I think.
I like to say in cannabis, like if you know if it was a one man operation, if I had to like grow the plant, cure it, you know, package it, create this design for it, and then like deliver the eighth, you know, it would take 6 months for me to deliver a single eighth to anybody.
Yeah.
And so that's why like you need a team. You know, it takes a village to sell cannabis. It takes a village to sell any product essentially. So
Mm-hmm.
embracing that and then supporting your teammates is always really important.
100%, 100%. And just being the solution too, right? To add on more to this subject is, you know, in the end of the day, we're all problem solvers. Like if you're a good salesperson, I think you being a good problem solver is something that you need to do and learn, because, you know, in the end of the day, you could sell the most amazing product, whether it's the best weed or the best vape or, you know, the best bong or whatever you want to sell. In the end of the day, there's a lot of people in this corporation that needs problems to be solved, right?
Yep.
Whether it's, for example, vaporizers, right? There's a lot of different companies that carry different vaporizers, but why is it that they don't carry yours? You know,
Yep.
that's a question you need to ask them, because
Yep.
they would answer it. They would also tell you too, the reason why they don't work with your company. Maybe that's a learning curve that the company needs to understand itself, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of like missing points. And as a salesperson, we could only do so much. We are the lifeline of a lot of companies. I'm gonna tell you that much,
Yep.
And I think as corporations, as business owners, yes, we get tied in, as a CEO, there's investors, there's different people that you need to talk to on a daily basis. But, as CEOs, if definitely you're still part of a corporation, you should definitely see your lifeline, which is yourselves. Once in a while, check in. Don't go through your VP or don't go through your management. Like, actually go through yourselves. I think if there was a perfect world, there would be a CEO that would actually come down from where their office is in the sixth floor and come down and be like, all right, let me see, how's everybody doing? Just a simple walk, not even to hear people, but just to say hi. What
Yep.
an amazing company that would be, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like, people don't understand that sales, we're in the front of the line of before a corporation decides to work with the company, right? So we hear it all. We hear it from like the negatives, the positives. We hear it from the wins and the losses. We hear everything. But I feel as a responsible corporation to people that are in sales, we definitely should be heard more. We definitely should be advised more. We definitely should be giving the resource to really help these clients more. You know what I mean? And I think that's what's missing a lot in different corporations, that we're definitely the front lines, but we're not given enough tools sometimes. You know what I mean? Or we're not given enough say, or we're not given enough ear, like for people to listen to us. So I think that's something as a corporation that we definitely need to start changing the culture in that. Changing that and listening more, because I give a lot of respect to people in sales. Whether you're a man or a woman, I think we definitely deal with a lot. So I think we definitely need to change the culture, you know what I mean? Especially with management. So, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people throughout my cannabis career treat sales people as kind of almost like mercenaries, right? Like, we hired you to go sell the product, and it's like, no, it's a lot more than that. It's like you said, like, we're here to also gather feedback and other kind of stuff like that. But then we're also only as good as our tools and assets that we have. There's a great book that I read that's called like Profits First or Building for Profits or something like that,
Right,
where they describe a business as an airplane, and like the CEO, like they're the pilot flying it, right? And like the manufacturing, that's the body. But then you have the two main drivers are sales and marketing, and those are your two engines, and those need to work together. Because like, if you're like, to your point, like, if I've been in organizations myself where there was no marketing really, or the marketing was very, very low. And then
right.
so then you are flying around in circles, right? Just because only one engine is going.
One engine.
Yeah. And then
It's
vice
true.
versa. Like, if you don't have a sales department, but you have a kick-ass, marketing team, then, everyone's going to know about you, but no one is actually you're not going to see any dollars coming in. You'll get a bunch of
Oh,
likes, you'll get a
100%.
bunch of followers on social media and stuff like that. Maybe some cool newspaper articles or magazines or whatever print media there is these days.
For sure.
Yes. I think like working together like that and making sure, and I've seen the organizations that do that, they have a lot of success, and and they're the obvious big ones too. You see, like in traditional CPG, just look at any, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Nike, any clothing, right? Like,
For
they all have
sure.
understood this, where like you need to put your message out there, and you also need to facilitate the people to support your message.
Absolutely. And in the cannabis world, we know that as MSOs, right? The multi state operators, they got it down, right? They have all engines working together. They have the CEOs very involved. I mean, I've been to a lot of like cannabis shows where I do see the founder and the CEOs. They're right there in the booth with everybody,
Yep.
right? So like those are the people that you see. You're like, all right, cool. Like they got it right, right? There's a reason why we know about these MSOs, because they're out there, they're doing it as it should be, right? And it's a
Yep.
culture thing too. Like it's a full circle. And it's like, if one is being neglected in the department, which is either sales or marketing, it's not gonna fly right, especially to your analogy with the plane. It's not. Yeah, definitely it's not.
So then, I know we've all been there, and I've seen a lot of it in cannabis, especially like in bud tenders, which just get like that burnout, right? There's bud tender burnout is like a very common thing. In sales, I see it too, kind of where people are just kind of throw their hands up and they're just like, screw this, I'm just going to go, into working, wherever, right?
Right.
how have you like dealt with like burnout, or how do you like help like your colleagues or, friends or family with it?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna start first with, my colleagues. Once again, it goes back to being an ear for them, right? Because if they're not being heard, especially from like our managers or VPs, etc., it's really hard to deal with that. And that's how people quit more easily and they leave. And some people even change industries, which is okay,
Yeah.
but sometimes I feel like as a corporation, you lose more when you do lose a good quality candidate that's working for a company that has the potential to take your company to the next level rather than not listening and they don't have nobody to speak to. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I deal with burnouts with my colleagues. And then also, if you do have like, if you work in an office, what I used to do, I would definitely take walks with my colleagues
Oh
because,
yeah.
us being in cubicles or even being in an office, even if you have a window, it feels good to take like a 10-minute walk and just go outside, breathe some fresh air, get some sun. That's like the best vitamin ever. And just try to like zone out a little bit. I think zoning out and like taking it a step back of where you're at is really helpful too. And also reminding my colleagues that they're responsible too for themselves. So like if they need to go work out, go. If they need to meditate, go do it. If you need to go to church, do it. If you want to go to anywhere, anything you need to do to really like zone yourself out and come back to who you are as a person. I encourage a lot of my colleagues to do that. And then that goes back to myself, how I deal with my burnouts, right? There was a lot of situations where I've dealt with huge amounts of burnouts that I was being neglectful towards myself, where I couldn't get out of bed. It was like 10 minutes before I clocked in. I wasn't even in the car yet. It was really, really hard for me to deal with after a while. But like once I literally clicked out of it and I said, whoa, whoa, this is not me. This is not the person I am. I'm a positive person. I'm an outgoing person. I love people and all this, etc. stuff. Like I started to remind myself. So what I do during burnouts, I really hone in every morning and I write down a lot of things that are positive about myself. Because in the end of the day, if you don't speak good about yourself, you're going to start thinking bad about yourself. Then you're going to start thinking about
Agreed.
bad about the company you're at, right? So that's kind of like a strategy that I would do every morning when I would hit burnouts. And then also, just being grateful, waking up and being grateful for where I'm at, whether it's a certain corporation, even though it's very hard to deal with, I'm
Yep.
grateful. And then I just continue my day, right? Walks, exercise. I definitely pray. At least one little Bible verse. I just open the book, bring it out, just read it. And then also, I definitely want people to understand this. When you're hitting a burnout, you need a one is take time to really realize how did you get here, right? You want to take that time to be like, all right, how did I get here? What was my responsibility that I should have dealt with before I got to a burnout, right?
Yeah.
And then once you do that, the second question you need to ask yourself, is this a place I want to continue, right? Because even though you get over those burnout hurdles, you definitely want to ask yourself, is this something I want to continue, right? And that's something I kind of dealt with my past corporation. I hit a burnout super drastically and I was like, man, I got over it. It feels okay. But then that question resonated within myself. Do I want to continue here? Right.
Yeah.
And I felt like I achieved everything that was possible to my ability. And I think I hit the peak that I was able to reach. And I was like, all right, cool. I think this is my time now. Because in
Makes
the
sense.
end of the day, yeah, you get it, right? Because in the end of the day, it's like, we're all choosing this life, right? What's happening to us, we're choosing it to happen. So, like, if we are going through burnouts after burnouts and we're in the same corporation that we're at, then that question comes about, do we want to continue? Or where else is our potential going to be valued at? You know what I mean? So that's kind of like how I
Definitely.
do it.
And I think that thank you for sharing that too. I think that's a great insight, and I think people would get a lot of benefit from that. Just kind of taking a step back, seeing where you are, and then kind of like how you want to continue with that. And I think that applies to like not only just like your work and career, but daily life, relationships, your overall like trajectory of where you are and stuff like that. I've had several
Mhm.
moments of that in my life where it's just kind of like I've lived over in Denmark for a while, and it's just it's just like I don't want to keep doing this. There's things over
Yeah.
here that's just I want to go back over to America, right? So it's just like when you like actually that makes sense. Like now that I'm thinking about this, like let's do that, right?
Yeah.
Or there's different various interests like that. So I think kind of just being aware of that kind of stuff and not just being like, accepting this is me now, or this is my state of mind.
Yeah,
I think it was like Tony Robbins or somebody who said like you can change your state of mind in 15 seconds, right? Like if
for
you're
sure.
so if you're, I've been pissed off before where you're like, I'm really mad. And you're like, oh, I
Hmm.
am really mad right now. I don't want to be mad right now. It's like, okay, I'm not going to be mad right now. And all of a sudden it's just kind of like,
Right.
or it's like, no, I am mad right now. I want to stay mad right now. Yes, feel the rage. And, and
When I get to that point, I'm gonna tell you right now, I go to the gym. I get the
yeah,
heaviest weight I can to my ability. And I'm tiny, I'm 5'3", right? And I don't have big muscles, but I definitely get the highest weight I can at the gym. I try to push it as much as I can. And that really calms me down. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like if I'm super raged, I go to the gym. Some people go running, some people go biking, some people go to the beach, to just get that fresh air. Those are
yeah.
all things and outlets that you could do for yourself, when it comes to anger. And yeah, definitely, I agree.
But my apartment usually gets a lot cleaner when I get angry. I just start cleaning everything.
That's so good. That's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have those attributes, but I would definitely try that next time. I would probably start like scratching my walls so hard that they're gonna start fading of paint. So I probably won't do that.
No, you gotta keep your what works for you. That's awesome. So aside from like the gym and other kinds of stuff like that, what other like stuff do you like to do for fun? Like what kind of stuff interests you?
Yeah. Yeah, like hobbies. A lot of people don't know I actually do equestrian riding. So I do horseback riding as well.
Very
That's
cool.
kind of, yeah, it's super fun. So I started that journey when I was in middle school. There was like a program that they used to take girls that wanted to learn more, like, I guess, responsibility and be more courageous and stuff like that. So I did take that when I was in middle school. I did Western riding. And then I just got back to it and I started doing equestrian riding, which is English saddle, totally different style of riding horses. And you basically jump over large fences, which is really crazy. When I think of it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm totally insane. But I would do that. That's one of my hobbies. I definitely love going on hikes too. So I'm like very outdoor person. And then I love doing like, kind of like window shopping too. Like I don't necessarily need to go shopping, but I love visiting like boutiques, upcoming boutiques that just opened like a month ago, or like boutiques that a lot of people don't know, but it's like a hidden gem. You know what I mean? And then also, I love trying different matchas. Like matchas is like definitely a new thing for me. So I've been going to different places to try out like different matchas and see, the qualities and stuff like that. And those are always like good gems to like go to, because it's like, man, you go in there and just like the coffee, like smell of the coffee or smell of the matcha, and you go into a little quiet space and you sit there for like literally less than probably like 5 minutes or until you finish your drink. I
Yep.
feel like that's something so soothing to me. So yeah.
Have you found any matchas that you like or prefer?
Yeah, I mean, there's this one company that just opened, kind of like where I stay at. They literally opened probably like a month, no, 6 months ago, and they're called Penny Coffee. And so far, they've been my favorite one. Like, because
Nice.
they're like right downstairs from my house. So I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect. And it's so quiet and it's so clean. Like, it doesn't have like a lot of like designs going out. So, like,
Nice.
I think that's one thing that I really like about like architecture, like designs, or even like, certain patterns. I need it to be plain, like plain and simple. And that makes me very like hone in into my mind, because like my mind is very scattered. I think I definitely have a little bit of ADHD because I haven't been diagnosed, but I think I do. And I
Yep.
feel like being in a calm space, simple, and just like a couple colors here and there really calms my mind. So, yeah, that's definitely what I like. Penny Coffee. Shout out Penny Coffee.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would definitely agree on like the calm, like neutral colors. Well, maybe not neutral. Like growing up, my room was like a bright orange, like really bright, and it was almost like the color like here, kind of.
Oh, wow.
And like being in there, that you just felt like you were like in the sun. It was just like super warm and just like happy, like to be in that room all the time. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. Art has a lot of impact in people, for sure. That's when it comes back to marketing, right? When it goes back to marketing, like I literally tip my hat off to a lot of marketers out there that are really putting a brand out because they know what to do, right?
Yep.
And from what I've heard from time and time again, little is more sometimes.
Yep.
And sometimes making a sleek like simplest device ever or simplest like colors ever, that makes it strong, that makes it bold, that makes it luxurious, right? So I think like simple is more sometimes, but also it just depends too, like what are you trying to portray in your brand. So I think marketers definitely have it down. And shout out to all those big CMOs, like definitely trying to make it happen for these corporations, because it is a lot of work. It's really hard to get a vision out, right? Especially
Yep.
with what you're trying to portray to the world and these consumers is definitely hard. So yeah, shout out to them.
Definitely. And I think a lot of like the cannabis producers that are also creating brands, it's like they chose like the difficult game, right? And they chose to play it on the hard mode too, because not only do they
Mhm.
have to grow and produce and like actually physically make products and like win the licenses and stay compliant, but they also need to produce a brand that resonates with the end consumer, fits within like an overall portfolio of products and brands that they have coming out of their facility. And I think that a lot of brands are now doing it really right. I saw a lot in the early days where people were, they didn't understand like that CPG model, and they thought, in their mind, like having a grow facility and having a brand is the same thing, right? So like the brand is the
Right,
grow facility, and it's like,
right.
well, like, do you want your A, B, and C buds all to be under the same brand, or do you want all popcorn and like A buds to be in the same brand, or do you want to have a value brand? Like, what happens to all the distillate versus live resin? It's
Yeah,
like, so I think people get to see that now, and like to your point, like the marketers are actually like seeing that and kind of like, let's do that,
for sure.
segmenting it.
For
Yeah,
sure. No, yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a growing industry, right? That's one thing that I really liked about being in this industry is that it's growing, it's maturing, and it's also changing. Every single year, I feel like it's a different year. It's a different monster to deal with. But I feel like we're all in the same boat trying to maintain this monster, right? And try to see how we stay compliant within our states or we stay compliant with the government, etc. Right? So it's
yeah,
just really interesting in the world that we're in right now. And I'm kind of interested really, Felix, of like where we're gonna end up, right? Because I feel like it's such a big amount of changing. Like where is it gonna be the point where we're gonna stay where we're at for a while? You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like nothing's changing. There's no different rules or any type of things that we need to change within our corporation in order for us to be compliant with the cannabis space. I don't know, it just feels like it's a lot of change. So I'm really excited to see like where it's going to end up, like where we're going to end up staying stagnant for a minute to see how much growth we could do.
yeah. I think that that's a very interesting point, just because there has been so much influx, and it's very hard to make business models and like predict where the future is going. Where markets are expanding and contrasting, and rules are expanding and contrasting at the same time. Yeah, it would be nice to get a little bit more standardization, hopefully,
For
like in the
sure.
positive direction.
We need to find somebody that has the crystal ball, just
Yeah,
go
that'd be
out there
nice.
and see, hey, you know what? I have a question. Can you let me know what's going on?
One of those
That
weed
would be
genies.
great. Can somebody do that? I don't know if they're in the government side or whatever, but give us some insight, give us some insight of what the future holds for us, because we're over
Yeah.
here trying to be fortune tellers, but we have no clue what's going on in the end of the day sometimes.
So if you did have like a magic like compliance wand or any kind of cannabis culture, like what would you try to implement if you did have like that? If Kimberly was queen of cannabis for America for a day.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, honestly, if I had a crystal ball, for one, I will definitely keep it to a point where a lot of states do end up legalizing, to the fullest.
Yep.
I think flower is number one that should be legalized to the fullest. I think us, expanding towards like the vaporization, the vapes and stuff like that, for sure it should be legal. But of course, like there's a lot of things that I think that were implemented for vaporizers that I think is beneficial, right? Because we don't want to be smoking any type of metals, of course. So I think
No.
where that's at, it's perfect, but I think it needs to be legal in all states as well. And I think where we need to start doing is having more facilities that actually let people that do consume be in the same facility. So I feel like
Yeah.
if I had a crystal ball, I would definitely legalize more, restaurants to have little spaces for people to smoke and definitely like consume, but just like to a certain extent, like limit them, because obviously we don't want people smoking and driving, right? But definitely I would tell more like facilities to open retails or like restaurants or even coffee shops, like
Yep.
more places like that where a lot of communities could come together and just be as calm as possible, but just, take in the positivities of the flower. That's what we're all here for. That's the whole point of this industry is like the benefits, yes, the relaxation, yes, the calmness, yes, we're all into that, right? So I feel like if I had a crystal ball, that's kind of like where I would take this industry at. I would put it more into that realm, the socialized world, right? Because we
Yep.
already legalized, smoking cigarettes. Yeah, they don't allow it inside, a restaurant, but they allow it outside, but you're still within the restaurant facility, right?
Yep.
They don't allow you smoking flower. Same thing with alcohol. You could drink whenever you want inside a restaurant, right? But I know restaurants are definitely capable of setting aside a certain facility just for like people that want to smoke, keep it on that section of the facility. Everywhere else, people that don't want it, right? But
Yep.
yeah, I think there needs to be a lot of changes in that. I don't see where that would be kind of like an intel, but of course, there's a lot of rules, 21 and over, etc. But that's kind of like where I would put it at.
Definitely. I think that's one thing I've talked to like almost like every guest about how it's like cannabis is a social, drug, social construct. It's a social thing that people
Right,
want to consume with other friends. A lot of people consume, at home for, nighttime for sleeping or, just relaxing and other kind of stuff. But the same is like with alcohol, not that I like to compare the two a lot, but if alcohol was not allowed to be consumed in public at no bars, no restaurants, no movie theaters, no public fairs or events,
right,
no amusement parks, no festivals, no concerts, right? Like the alcohol industry would be very small, right? Like not too many
yes,
people would drink, they buy like a six pack or like a bottle for home, and like it wouldn't be,
exactly.
yeah, and you wouldn't get that same exposure. And so I think that there already is a model for this, right? We can look at this. There is public consumption for other substances,
Hmm.
and the world hasn't gone to shit, or at least not that much.
Yeah, for sure, for
So yeah, I
sure.
think that incorporating that and like kind of normalizing it, and then I'm also kind of excited about what type of people that would bring into cannabis, right? Like, because right now cannabis has kind of like the certain people that are already seeking it out, they're already using it. But if the everyday person used cannabis, like what kind of new brands would we have? What type of new
Right,
products would we have? What kind of like experiences would there be? Would there be an
100%.
equestrian brand? Would there be like a bud ranch,
Exactly.
right, where you can go there and like have like a bed and breakfast and go
Imagine that would be
yeah, so like
so cool, and that's exactly to your point. Like, who knows the type of people that have certain ideas that will come out with these amazing experiences for everybody, right?
yeah,
And that's so cool to like actually think about, and that's actually exciting to think about too. That's like you never know, right? Like the type of ideas that people have. So it's like, dang, we got to get to that point. Hopefully we do. Hopefully that's that stagnant point where we all come to an agreement, on the government side, the state side. Let's see, maybe we could get to an agreement where it's like, okay, yeah, let's try it out. Let's see where the stats hold. And I feel
yeah.
like there will be a lot of more positivity towards it rather than negative. That's just my theory, but you never know. You just never know.
I mean, if you look at like the alcohol industry again, like when they allowed more craft brewers, and like opened up that a lot, like all of a sudden, the craft brew industry exploded over across like the country where those, thousands and thousands everywhere. I think there's a couple hundred here in Chicago alone. And
Right.
so just kind of seeing those kind of innovations in people like starting a brewery and starting a whole business, and then the trickle
So
down effects of that, it's like they need designers, they need marketers, they need bottle procurements, they need to rent a space. And it just kind of, fuels this whole thing.
for
It just
sure.
becomes really interesting. And you get people that are, very passionate about certain flavors or brands or other things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's crazy. It's crazy stuff, man. But hopefully we do get to that point, because it's a lot of opportunity that's definitely is waiting for somebody to take. But of course, there's a lot of hiccups to it, right? A lot of rules, a lot of things that a lot of people need to go through, a lot of hoops, and that's why a lot of people haven't taken those opportunities because there's a lot of rules to it, right? A lot of
Yep.
taxes. There's a lot of taxes to it too. Because it's like at the end of the day, if you think about it, right? You open up a business, you're making profit. Sure, you always need to pay Uncle Sam, but when
Yep.
Uncle Sam is full and you still need to feed him more, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, how do I even make enough profit for myself where I can put food in my family's table, right? So it's like that's another thing, another subject that's really crazy too. Like the taxes that these people are paying for their businesses that they literally built from the ground up is insane to me. Like it's insane. Like I don't even understand like sometimes like how they're feeding their families because I'm like, dang, those numbers are sickening, you know?
Yeah, it has prevented me from launching several brands myself, or it's just kind of
Right.
like you look at the numbers and it's just like the margins aren't there, and then there's
Mhm,
no tax write-off, so there's nothing you can,
mhm.
supplement that way. Yeah, and it's very difficult.
It's so crazy. But shout out to all those people that did make it happen. Like one of my girls, Anna Willie from Cam, she is a dog, man. Like I really respect her in general. And I think what she's doing in the industry is super, super, powerful and like uplifting. Cause like I'm sure like she gets hit with those type of things as well. But like, look,
Oh
she's
yeah.
making it happen. She has a great team. So yeah, shout out to the Cam team. I think they're really doing a great job. And when it comes to marketing, I definitely want to shout out Angela Pye. She's doing great as far as, portraying what brands really want in the marketing space. So like those are
Nice.
people that you want to recognize in the industry that are really making it happen regardless, right? And then that's
Yes.
why sometimes like with people like us that haven't started anything, if I was in somebody's shoes that really wanted to make it happen, I would follow the people that are successful, right? Because a lot of people in this industry, truly, Felix, we look at other people that are successful as competition, And I feel like we need to switch that mindset and be like, they're not competition. They're actually my mentor. They already made the space for me. They already made the road for me. Let me follow what they did, but let me make it a little different. Let me put some
Yep.
gold pavement. Instead of dirt pavement, let me put gold on it. Let me put trees on the pavement, like obviously I'm using metaphors, but like that's kind of like the idea that a lot of people need to understand. When you get into a certain industry, you definitely want to follow these successful people because they already did it. They are
Yep.
there already. So like whenever you start to feel that little fire, and I'll do the same too, I'm gonna try to see how these people did it because they did it already. And yes, it's gonna be hard, and yes, it's gonna be a couple years in, but if we do end up deciding to make our own brand, our own etc. things, I know for a fact we could do it because we've seen these people firsthand how to do it, how to make it happen.
Oh yeah. In like the science world, they talk about like standing on the shoulders of giants, where like the people that came before you, they're not your competition. They're actually the people that did this stuff like that, and the work that you're able to do is because of the work that they did, essentially, right?
Exactly.
Any brand that's launching now is not launching during a time of like pre-prohibition, right? They're not launching during a time of like,
Yeah,
I mean, they're new markets that are expanding. Every market that's expanding now has other playbooks from other markets, right? They're not like launching a brand new, pre 2020 brand. And so there's always kind of
100%.
like there's people to look at, there's people to consultants, there's don't do what that brand did, don't do that.
Or
We know where to like the pitfalls to avoid, and like the win spots to like, oh, let's make sure we do that.
for sure. And that's something I really want to point out, Felix, because in any industry, like for example, I'll give you an example. My dad has his own company, right? He's been having his own company for 20 plus years. He worked in a different corporation before that. It was in pest control. But what he did is he asked the right questions, right? When he started to branch out, he asked the right questions to all these big corporations that already had different, branches all over the state. Hey, how did you do this? How do you make that happen? So like, for example, like us, if we ever decide, we have background in vaporizers. If we ever decide to do it, why can't we just ask the right questions to our bosses, to the CEOs, right? Because
Yep.
a lot of people don't understand that it's not really a secret that they hold. It's more of a path that we want to take or not, right? And a lot of people do tell you. A lot of people do tell you the manuscript, like, okay, you want to do it, here it is. You know what I mean? But a lot of
Yep.
people won't share it with you because they probably feel like, oh no, they're just trying to see how I did it, but they're not gonna really do it. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like if you're really courageous and you really want to go out there and make it happen for all your listeners, for all our friends here, I think it's really important to see like, hey, if you want to make it happen, ask the right question. If you want to open up a coffee shop, ask somebody, I don't know, from like a little coffee shop that's down the street or around your area. Hey, how did you do that? Hey, you
Yep.
know what? I have this amazing idea. I just kind of want to get some mentorship. I don't know if you have time, right? And I feel like a lot of these people do share how they make it happen, and a lot of them will share their stories of exactly how it happened, right? And I think that's a lot
Exactly.
of motivation for yourself too, to really go out there and be like, all right, this is the manuscript. Obviously, I'm not going to copy what they did, but I'm also going to create my idea, put it together. Let me see how I can make it happen.
Definitely. Yeah, and like if you look at the most successful people in any industry, whether it be like Warren Buffett or Jimmy Donaldson, like Mr. Beast, they all give their playbook to anyone who's willing to listen. They're like, "This is how you do it." They say it over and over again. This is how I did it. And then people keep asking them like, "Why would you tell this playbook?" And they're like, "Well, no one's going to do it, but for the 1% of people that do it, I actually want to encourage them and support them because it's not a finite, like success is not finite. Everybody can have
Right.
success and stuff like that. Your success
Yeah.
isn't somebody else's downfall, kind of thing like that.
Hmm.
And if you think that your success means that somebody else needs to fail, you're already at like kind of a losing mindset.
100%, 100%, so to all our friends here, definitely want to encourage them, if you have an idea, do it. The only thing that's holding you back is yourself, because
Yeah,
there's unlimited information out there, and there's a lot of people that are willing to answer the questions you have. I'll tell you that much.
agreed. I
Hmm.
know if anyone has any questions for either Kimberly or myself, I know that either one of us will happily answer any questions.
For sure, absolutely.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, Kimberly, this has been great chatting with you. We've learned a lot, covered tons of different topics. If somebody wants to reach out to you and connect, where are some good spots for them to do that at?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys do have a LinkedIn, search me up. It's under Kimberly Mora. I'll be more than happy to conversate with you guys there. You guys could follow me as well on Instagram. It's under limitless_Kim. And yeah, those are the best places you could find me. Go ahead and send me a DM, send me a message. I'd love to talk to you guys and just, spread the word of more motivation and just, answer any questions that I have to my basic capability, when it comes to sales. So yeah.
And then you also can be found on Amazon,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Kimberly is not only an amazing salesperson, but she is also an author, which we cannot go without saying here. So if you want to, support Kimberly here, learn a lot here, it's a very enlightening book. Definitely encourage you
Yes.
to go over to Amazon. We'll put a link in the bio for that as well.
Oh yeah,
Um,
guys. Show
and I
some love.
think,
I would love for you guys to check it out. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I think that you really embody that. You're the only one holding yourself back. There's very few people that I know that have taken the initiative to write a book, right? And there's no one that you need to get permission to write a book, right? It's just you need to just do it yourself.
100%.
Before we kind of check out here, like, do you have any like words of advice or any kind of like tips for somebody who actually is interested in writing a book?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to writing a book, I think the first thing you need to do is start jotting it down. Start writing notes. It doesn't need to make sense right now, because that's exactly how I went down with my book. I just started jotting down things on napkins, on any type of paper. Like I was jotting down things, and I had no idea what my book was going to become. And then eventually I kind of honed in and I got all my notes together of what I was trying to portray in my poetry book. And it ended up being a book. And I ended up, obviously tweaking some things, sending it to editors to try to make it into something that makes sense. And then eventually I was able to make the title. So, what I'm going to tell all your friends, all of our friends right now, is that if you have a certain idea, definitely jot it down, and when there's a will, there's a way. If you guys have any question on writing a book, let me know. I definitely have the manuscript on that. But yeah, definitely, I think right now, if you have a certain idea or a certain story you want to portray, start jotting it down, start writing it. I think there's a lot of power when it comes to a pen and writing it on a piece of paper, because you don't know what you're creating till you actually realize. And I have 50 pages in front of me and I made a book. So I think that's really important there. But yeah, don't limit yourself. I'll leave you guys with this quote here. The only limitations that you have are the limitations that you put upon yourself. And that's something that I've held, close to my chest for the longest time since I started working my first job at Journeys, selling shoes and sneakers. You're only limited to the things that you put upon yourself. So yeah.
Amazing. That's great. And when I finish the book, I'll definitely let you know so we can conversate on that. And I'll definitely have some questions about writing a book that I'm definitely going to ask you later on.
Oh, for sure.
Um,
Let's do it.
Sweet. Well, this has been great, Kimberly. Really enjoyed this. I'd love to get you back on again so we can do maybe a whole episode on how to write a book because I think that'd be really interesting. Definitely. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll be chatting.
Thank you, friends. Have a wonderful day. Bye.